Welcome to Married to History, where we try to be informative, entertaining, and family friendly.
Aloha, I'm Christopher. I have a fancy piece of paper on my wall that says that I know more about history than most people do, and I am also a hardcore advocate for games being able to teach history.
That's okay.
I'm Shirley. We played a lot of games at school today. It was great.
Oh, you did? That's right. Well, and we just got done talking about a new board game that we need to get, apparently.
Mm-hmm.
All right, I'm Shirley. I'm a homeschool mom that relies on good curriculum, Christopher, and Ragtime the musical to teach our kids history.
Gee, did you pick Ragtime on purpose because we just talked about that in the previous episode?
No, I didn't. It was just happened to come
turn.
up in my list. Hey, honey, I have a history question for you.
I love history questions.
So which historical event do you think was caused by aliens? I'm not saying it was
Stop
aliens.
right now. I will not entertain
but
this.
But it was aliens.
I will not abide this by any. How dare you claim that our ancestors were incapable of doing some of these things on their own and must have had extraterrestrial help?
Okay, so I don't think it was aliens, but it was aliens. But
give me strength.
Some of these is fun. It's just a silly thought exercise.
I know that you think it's fun. I know that you say it's a silly exercise. But there are truly people out there that refuse to believe that it could be anything other than aliens. And those people annoy me.
Yeah.
They are fools, honey.
They are fools.
There are foolish people out there, and they are the most foolish. I'd call them something else, but I promise to stop doing that.
Yeah.
Well, I promise to try to stop doing that.
Yeah. Now, to be serious, I have seen people argue that to believe these great things were done by aliens instead of humans could be a racist thing. Like, some people take it that far as to say, like, if you can't believe that these humans were capable of that, then that's offensive. Which is an interesting idea.
Well, I mean, the theory holds, but it takes racism to a different level. It's like, okay, are you talking about that you thought that, these people from Africa or the Middle East were incapable of building the pyramids? Or are you saying that humanity, was incapable of building the pyramids?
Yeah. Okay, fine. So if you don't want to talk about aliens, what are the most amazing things to have been done or built in history that are almost unbelievable?
I don't think you're going to be happy.
What does that mean?
Computers. That's stuff of the modern day. Computers,
boring.
Airplanes. Okay, well, so, all right, if I'm going to go with the idea of what things have maybe had the most significant impact throughout history, I'd say the very first one is boats, or the concept of anything that floats.
Okay.
So I don't know if I've said this before on the program or whatnot, but throughout history, water, to this day, water is still the best, the cheapest, the most effective means of transportation for anything.
I feel like we talked about this recently.
We probably have, because I kid you not, it is without a doubt one of the most important things in history, and again, without any doubt, the most important means of transportation throughout human history.
Right.
The advantages are numerous. I mean, stuff can float down river or sail on the ocean while the crew is sleeping. You can hold more stuff on a boat than you can put on a pack animal or on your person. Generally, there's less to worry about as far as thieves, pirates, or anything to that nature, because there's only so many places. They can't exactly sneak up on you, or rather, it's harder for a boat to sneak up on you out there.
If there's enough fog, you could sneak.
Okay. So water has always been the primary means of transportation. Trains get darn close, but trains never do beat water transport. All trains do is enable it. So, okay, now we have a means of, in places where we just can't we can't find a water route to. Now with trains, we can at least move a substantial amount of stuff to those places that we want it to be.
Right.
So that is an advantage that trains give, but still, water is the number one. And airplanes, quite honestly, they're a joke. Yeah, airplanes can go just about any
joke.
Quite honestly, they're a joke. Yes, they can go just about anywhere, but the amount of cargo that they can hold is minuscule in comparison to train cars and especially boats.
Oh, I didn't. Yeah, think
airplanes. Well, don't get me wrong. Airplanes are very big and they can hold a lot of weight, but comparatively, they can't hold that much weight. They can't hold that much stuff.
Wow. So What does boats have to do with aliens or really amazing,
Nothing. You
unbelievable
dismissed
technology?
the alien premise, and that I could just talk about what some of the most important things were. So yes, the ability to figure out how to move things around by water, I would dare say, is the number one accomplishment of mankind. I would say the only thing that I would be willing, the only thing at the moment that I'm willing to entertain an argument of could be more of a contributor would be agriculture, being able to farm.
Yeah. Okay, so what do you think was like one of the biggest, most important or revolutionary improvements we were able to make to boats? Because like how hard could a boat be? It's just a bowl that floats.
I'd say sailing power, being able to harness the wind and the sails too, so that we're not dependent upon currents anymore, or not dependent on oar power or manpower to get the boats to where we want them to go. Because wind is a truly renewable resource. It's almost never going to stop. I mean, there are calms out there, but it can come back. And then again, while the crew is resting or recovering its strength, the winds will continue to blow, especially as time went on and lots of different cultures had their own methods, their own discoveries also about sailing, in particular about winds. They were able to get darn good at it. I mean, the British Navy, the officers there, they were monsters. These people were, and children, even younger than 12 years old, are starting to learn how to figure these things out, learning wind patterns, how to predict when squalls and whatnot are coming, so that they could be really, really, really efficient mariners. And yeah, these traditions. So I could be wrong. I'd be willing to bet that a lot of that maritime awesomeness has kind of gone astray because we got GPS now, and we got a lot of guys that take jobs on boats rather than, this was the life they were born to.
Yeah.
I've met
skills become obsolete.
I met more than a couple of guys that worked on boats when I was in Hawaii, and I got the impression from them that, it's like being a. So I don't mean to diminish boat workers. I know in many cases it's a dangerous job, and every job has a various amount of skill and importance that goes into it. But the overall impression that I got was, okay, you're basically living on a house and you're doing chores all day. Now, these chores can be very detailed, very dangerous, hazardous, require a lot of skills, but that's still what you're doing, rather than like nobody on the ship now is like, I have to check my course and make sure that I'm going to land at this location where I want to at this time. That's thousands and thousands of miles away that I can't possibly see where it is. Whereas, no, now we have hyper-accurate maps, we have hyper-accurate compasses, and again, we got the GPS satellites, so
it's a different ballgame.
It's a different world. Technology, as is often the case, technology has rendered a lot of older skills essentially obsolete. And as long as technology exists, those skills will remain to be obsolete.
Right.
So, I've met a couple of people that were old traditionalist sailors, knew how to spot storms coming, knew how to guide themselves by the stars and whatnot, and that's really, really cool. But he, more often than not, is going to lose to, if they get into like a boat race or a deep sea voyage or something of that nature, he's probably going to lose to some boat that's using motorized engines and has all the latest bells and whistles or whatnot. So unless there's a worldwide blackout because all the power goes away, or our ability to maintain power comes out,
it's possible.
I'm not saying it's impossible, but his skill set is one that is no longer needed. We're going to want it back if ever the technology goes away, and we're probably not going to have enough people around to still know how to do it to teach it to the rest of us. But for the moment, it is a sign of things that have become obsolete. Yeah. So I remember we've talked about this on a couple of occasions. We know that teaching cursive is important because if kids don't know how to read and write cursive, then they're not going to be able to read old documents.
Yeah.
That said, I've been compelled of late to recognize the validity of, but we have software that can read this stuff now. And so kids really don't need to know how to read cursive or write cursive anymore. I wouldn't be surprised if we get to a point where we're just going to stop teaching kids to write at all, because even our mobile devices have keyboards on them.
Well, that's what your son would prefer.
And people, I dare say that kids of this day and age are probably writing more with their thumbs than they are with a tool.
Yeah.
And you can't dismiss that. As much as I know that I've hated it in the past, I can't dismiss that. There's some kids out there that could type. If I were to give all my students like a 5-paragraph essay and tell them, type this, I wouldn't be surprised. Like if I tried to type it on my computer and I gave them their cell phones, I'm sure these kids would clobber me out typing that.
It doesn't help that you henpeck. Like someone who knows how to type on a QWERTY keyboard could go faster.
Thank you for telling our loyal listeners that I'm still a henpecker.
I'm sorry.
Pretty good at henpecking. Pretty fast.
Yes. Okay, so I will say at the moment, like your mom and we know other people who spend a lot of their time, like it's a hobby, to digitize old documents, right? At the moment, that work is still being done by hand.
Yep.
But I don't dispute that it's going the direction of the technology getting better. It will become up to the machines more and more.
And
yeah.
That's what happens.
Yeah, it does. Okay, I have a couple things.
Okay.
First of all, I saw this probably on TikTok a little while ago, and this was so cool. So this might be an article you'd be interested in reading. But this happened in, I think, the end of April this year. This is, the headline is Sailing Boat Rescued by the Göteborg. I'm sure I'm pronouncing that wrong because it's Swedish.
Okay.
Okay, this is the beginning of the article. Imagine losing your rudder out at sea and sending out a distress call. And then the largest ocean-going wooden sailing ship in the world comes to your rescue. Or in the words of the sailors on the sailing boat, this moment was very strange, and we wondered if we were dreaming. Where were we? What time period was it? So yeah, it literally was off the coast of France. This modern boat had issues. They sent a distress call, and the boat that was able to get to them first was a historic sailing boat.
Yep. So there are a couple of boats like this out there.
And they're like, what is this?
I remember they built one or two of these in Hawaii, one using original materials and one using modern day materials.
Oh, I remember talking about this. Yes, the traditional canoes.
I believe they've got one of European design out in Australia, I think, or at least I seem to recall reading something about that not all that long ago. And I don't know all of them, but I know that there are other vessels like this that are out there in the world. I don't know that our listeners know this, but for a time I considered joining the Coast Guard because I knew that they had a sailing ship. It was built out of modern materials, but I loved sailing. I still love sailing. I wish I could do it more often. And I really thought that I want to do that. That was a goal I had in life, was to get into the service, either the Coast Guard or the Navy now, because now it's been so long I don't remember which one it was.
I don't know.
I know I was more eager about the Navy, so maybe it was in the Navy. But either way, that was the job that I wanted if I had joined whatever service it was.
So they exist, but it's definitely rare.
Yeah, and it is cool because they are still capable vessels. Oh, there was a reality show not that long ago where they put modern people on a old-fashioned ship and the whole season was just documenting the voyage that they made. I think they were making a voyage somewhere in the South Pacific. I never did watch the show. I just remember seeing the commercials for it.
Yeah, I don't know.
There was one guy showing how the toilets worked and how you bathed out there. You dump a bucket of water over yourself.
Salt water?
Yeah, you can't waste the fresh water on that.
Yeah. Well, you just don't bathe.
If I remember correctly, in the commercial, the guy says, "This is no pleasure cruise." And I'm like, duh. The only pleasure you're getting on that cruise is if you wanted to be there for that experience. Yeah. I remember I wanted to do that. I remember when I was younger, when I had my dreams of being a millionaire someday, I wanted to commission and build an old-timey ship. And I was hoping that I would eventually be able to do a business where I could take that ship out into San Francisco Bay, and then we could roll up on cruise ships or tourist ships that are going through the bay and pretend to fire at them, pretend like we're a pirate ship coming to get them, because I thought that would be so cool. You can't tell me that the tourists wouldn't think that was awesome. At least, you want to warn them ahead of time that this was what could happen, so that they didn't think that when our cannons are firing blanks at them, that they're actually being shot at. Yeah,
they have to know it's a show and not actual cannons firing.
San Francisco is so dead of tourism these days. Probably a good idea that I never wasted millions of dollars on such a project.
Would have been fun, though.
It would have been fun, though.
Okay, so I have a question. So, remember that movie that you used to watch all the time on repeat?
You'll have to be more specific.
I know, there's always something. The one about old boats.
You'll still have to be more specific. I can think of at least 7.
Oh, that's true. I forgot the Horatio Hornblower.
Okay, so not that one, then I can think of 1.
No. Yes, I'm talking about Master and Commander.
Okay.
So I remember.
It's based off a book that was written by that guy that wrote the book about old boats.
That's right. Yeah, him. Yeah. Patrick O'Brien.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. So I remember that in that movie, they were chasing some other boat.
Yes.
Okay. And they couldn't figure out, like, why is this guy so much faster than us?
Mm-hmm.
And then the one guy, like one of the crewmen, was like, I was there in port with my wife when they were building this boat. And then he like builds a replica of how he remembers the boat to be.
Yep.
Okay. And then the captain was like, "Oh my gosh, this is it! Extra rum for you, and let's beat him." Okay, what was that innovation? What was so special about that boat? It just looked like the bottom of a boat. Like, what was so special about that one that it was so much faster than theirs?
Okay, so I'm not overly familiar with the concepts of what went into it.
Okay.
But the reason why it stood out was that it was something about the changing in the planking and the framing of the boat. So boats are designed not just to sit there on the ocean, because then they would just bob all the time. They're designed with keels. They're designed in such a way so that they can travel through the water efficiently.
What's
so
a
that
keel?
The keel is the beam that comes down the center of the boat underneath it.
Like a sharp edge.
So yeah, it's the sharp edge,
Okay.
or in this case, it's the sharp middle, and its purpose, amongst others, is to help the thing cut through the water faster. So remember, one of the biggest problems with traveling through water versus traveling on an open road is that friction is more of a problem in the ocean. Even though water is not as burdensome as dry land, we can more easily walk across dry land than a boat can cut through the water of the ocean. Because think about it like a person walking only has to cut through air. He's not cutting through the ground beneath his feet. He's passing over that. But a boat doesn't do that. A boat is trying to cut through the water that it's hitting, especially if it's going against the currents. So the design of the boat's exterior is just as important as its interior, but in particular the exterior is what helps the boat be able to travel faster. So in this case, the boat, and this was actually true during the days of the French Revolution, of the Napoleonic Wars. Even though the British had the larger navy, the British boats and British boat designs were a little bit older, a little bit more conservative. The newer boats with like revolutionary ideas about their framing, about how to make them travel faster or last longer, whatever the case was, these were more often amongst the French ships. So the French had fewer ships, but their ships were more technologically sound. Didn't do them a lot of good because the British proved that, all right, even though your ships are more awesome than ours, our crews are still massively outclass you, and our expert crews can use our unclassy vessels better than your inexperienced crews can use your classy vessels.
Right. So what? Their keel was sharper, or what?
So again, I'm not overly familiar with what all the details were, but yes, something about the exterior design looked new enough to the character Warley, and the commander recognized it too right away. That this is a type of framing I've never seen before. But upon noticing it, realize the benefits that it has. Just like boat designers today, or experienced boat designers, can do the same thing. So something that I would love to compare it to would be submarines. A significant jump in submarine warfare occurred during World War II. So most people, when you think submarine warfare, where are they doing their fighting?
In the ocean.
Where in the ocean? Above the water, under the water?
Under the water, because they're submarines.
All right, so that is not true.
Okay.
Submarine warfare, well, yes, some of it did take place underneath the ocean. For the most part, up until about the tail end of World War II, submarine warfare usually consisted of the submarine surfacing and using a deck gun to fire at its targets. It could dive beneath the diving was a hiding mechanism. It was not the primary function of the submarine. It could dive to hide from airplanes overhead or from predators that are chasing it. And yes, it was perfectly capable of launching its torpedoes to destroy its targets.
Okay, they did have torpedoes.
Yeah,
they
did
could
have
use
torpedoes,
under the water.
but again, the primary function was to run on the surface and to use its deck gun, not to run underwater. So the original submarines were diesel engines. This means that if they were under the water, there's no tailpipe. The fumes are staying inside with the crew, so they can't keep the engines on very long before they're going to asphyxiate the crew.
Yeah, so you have to surface to let out the exhaust.
You have to surface to let out the exhaust, and you can run your steam engine, or steam. You can run your diesel engines all day long when you're on the surface, because then you got a tailpipe. I don't remember when it was designed, but at the tail end of World War II, Germany finally comes up with the true submarine, an actual submarine designed for underwater warfare, not to operate on the surface and be able to hide.
Yeah.
And among the things that they did differently to this was its design. If you look at a typical World War II era submarine, you can very easily tell that almost all of them are designed to run primarily on the surface. They've got a top flat level deck, and then as they go down into the water, they cut into a sharp angle, kind of like an arrow that where the keel is, to help them cut through the water, the surface water, easier.
Okay.
When you dive down into the ocean, that design isn't very helpful because, okay, well, now you're completely surrounded by water. Being able to cut through the bottom part isn't going to make you travel any faster. The Type 21 was the German submarine that they built towards the tail end of the war. They managed to get, I think, 2 operational before the war was over, but it was a too little, too late thing. They were never able to sink any targets before the war was over. But this thing was designed to be smooth all the way around. So submarines before that time, they had the tower, they had deck guns, they had ramps on the tower, they had the exterior design that we already talked about to be able to help them cut through the top of the water, the surface of the water. But no, on the Type 21, no deck guns. There was a tower, but she was smooth all the way around. No railings for the crew to walk on or anything to that nature.
Just more aerodynamic in general?
And her design was not to be able to cut through the top of the water tail. Her design was made purposely so that the bulk of her was going to be underwater, and only a small portion of her was actually going to be able to be above the water and cutting through the surface. For the most part, she was just sleek all the way around to help her cut through just the water of the ocean because she was supposed to be submerged. So that's an example of, all right, to create greater efficiency for their purposes, whatever the job is of the ship, they came up with new methods, new technology, a new way of designing her hull to get her to do the job they wanted her to do better.
Cool.
Supposedly there is still a Type 21 in existence. It's on display somewhere in Germany, and if ever we get over there, that is going to be on my list of we are visiting this thing. Because there are so many innovations they put into that boat that were just absolutely beautiful.
But none of it was used because it was the end of the war.
No, so at least 2 of them were operational, and one of them did put to sea.
Okay.
In fact, the one that they did put to sea actually
popped up in the middle of
popped up right in the middle of an Allied fleet.
We talked about this.
Yeah, they were testing the submarine out, and the captain and the crew, they were all excited because like, we are right in the middle of these guys, and they have no idea we're here. Freaked out everybody when they just surfaced right in the middle.
Yeah, because they were told war's over, don't attack.
He was in position. He could have attacked that convoy, taken out a couple of ships.
Oh my gosh.
But it was too close to the ceasefire hour, so like, all right, boys, surface.
Oh my gosh.
And the Allies were quick to snatch up anything they could recover of those Type 21s. And believe it or not, so the very first nuclear submarines that were built, they used the 21, or the 21 was their model when they built them.
Well, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Okay, back to Master and Commander though.
Yep.
How did knowing why that boat was faster than his, how did that help him?
So in classical combat, there are a number of different features that you have to think about if you're going to beat your opponent. The more advantages that your opponent has over you, well, the harder your fight is going to be. And so you've got to try to find some way of balancing out or countering those advantages he has.
Okay.
So in this case, a big problem in naval warfare is if your opponent is faster than you.
Yeah.
If your opponent is faster than you, then this means that whether you're wounded or not, if he wants to fight you, he can catch up with you, and you won't be able to get away with him.
Yeah.
On the converse side of that is that if he doesn't want to fight you, he can get away, and you won't be able to catch up to him.
Run.
So overcoming the speed is a hard thing to do. And in the case of Master and Commander, granted, I never read this book, so I don't know how many of the details from the movie are accurate, but if we go off of the movie, then everything about this ship said that it was better. It was larger, and despite the fact that it was larger, though, because of its new design, it was faster and more maneuverable than they were. So they had a bigger crew, they had more guns, they had bigger guns, they had guns that could shoot farther than the Surprise's guns, and again, their ship was faster. So all those advantages means that the British, the Surprise, should have been destroyed and defeated many, many times over whenever there was an engagement between the two of them. But Aubrey is able to use some shenanigans and be able to use the better seamanship of his crew to give a decent fight and even manage to win the day by the end. So I think I mentioned this before. It was a rule of thumb in the British Navy that your ship is expected to be able to take out a whole class of enemy warship higher than you. So
Dang.
think about it like let's say let's say a group of 3 soldiers in the American military. It is expected that you are going to be, if there's 3 of you, it is expected that you are going to be able to win a fight against at least 7 opponents.
Holy cow. Yeah, no.
They're going to cut those 3 guys a break if you can't beat 8, but it is expected that you will be able to beat at least 7.
Oh my god.
I'm kind of making that number up in my head, but that's
but
the
still,
idea. It's the idea that you're supposed to be
outmatched.
able to do better despite the fact that you're outmatched.
Yeah. Shoot. Okay.
And it served them well. British Navy was an unstoppable force for centuries.
Right.
So we talked about some of the great things that Elizabeth did back in the day. Elizabeth founded, or established rather, what will eventually become the famous British Navy. British had always had warships that they could use in times of war before Elizabeth's time, but she is the one that really establishes what will eventually become the Royal Navy of legend.
Cool.
Yep.
All right, so what is your favorite, or you think is the most impressive or the most surprising for the time period, the best boat? If we're talking like English warships like these ones that we're talking about, or the type that Polynesians use to do their navigation, far across the ocean, or like Viking ships, or, pick your time period. What is the coolest?
Oh, okay. So
or most impressive, or
if I was going to go with the coolest, okay. So if I had my opportunity to choose which vessel to ride in, and if I could only pick one of the 2, Viking longships definitely would be on my list. But I think I would go with a Polynesian. I don't know the name of this particular one.
I don't remember.
The boat that I believe this is a Hawaiian boat. I might be wrong on it, and I don't remember what the name of this boat was called. But so it was basically made of 2 canoes, and these were giant canoes made from hollowed out, humongous tree trunks, like beyond sequoia in size tree trunks.
Dang.
And there's a flat platform in the middle of them.
Like the boats we see in Moana?
Similar at least.
Where they're navigating?
Larger than I think the ones that we see in Moana, but similar in their design.
Okay.
So the hollowed out trunks, well, that's where the crew would sleep if they're not going to sleep up on the surface. And that's also where they would store their supplies and whatnot in there. So I would love to get on a sailboat like that.
Yeah.
Because I think that would just be cool. I say that I would prefer that one over the Viking longship, because even though the Viking longship is also cool, Viking longship is in the open air, so they can put canvases and whatnot over you so that you have some kind of shelter. Yeah. But at least in the Hawaiian canoe type boat, no, if I want to, I could go into and sleep inside there. There'd be some shelter. Because as much as I love sailing, if it does get really, really cold, and eventually I'm going to get tired of the rain and the cold, I'm going to want a nice dry spot to sit for a spell.
That makes sense.
Yeah. But if we were going to go with, like, what boat do I want more than anything to be on, I got to tell you, that Type 21 is a darn good competitor. Because submarines are cool.
I don't understand. It scares me. The claustrophobia, what if something goes wrong and we're just either going to be crushed
there's one advantage
drowned?
of the Type 21. Because of her new design, she was bigger than all the other submarines of her time. Still cramped, but there was bigger.
You're in a tin can in the ocean.
Yes.
Surrounded by water. That's terrifying.
And accidents have happened, but it's still fairly safe. We have not had quite as many deaths on failed submarines as we have on airplane crashes. Okay, I can't say that for certainty, but I'm inclined to believe that we have had less people die in submarines outside of warfare. We have had less people die in submarines than we have had die in plane crashes.
Sure, you're probably right. Okay, question though, those Viking longships, did they actually look like that? Like the classic, big old dragon in the front? That's real?
So it was not necessarily always a dragon, but yes, they would have a headpiece.
But bigger than just like the mermaid.
You've seen that on European ships. There's almost always a headpiece. Oh, and so this isn't even true of European ships. I can't say for sure, because I can't think of a Hawaiian one off the top of my head, but I know they carved stuff into the design of their ships. But I know that I've seen ships from Asia, from Europe, from different parts of Europe and different parts of Asia that have had headpieces on them of some kind or another,
Right.
some type of prow in the front
Mm-hmm.
portion to display the glory, to show how cool it is, maybe to intimidate the people in front of them, whatever the case might be. Yeah, almost everybody has done it. So yeah, the Vikings would have something on the front of their
Mm-hmm.
ship. Not always, but it was easily enough to carve, or to the best of my knowledge, it was easy enough to carve something up there.
Yeah.
And also, again, it would have been like a sign of prestige. So definitely anybody of renown or royalty
Mm-hmm.
or wealth would have had something probably carved into that
Yeah.
one.
Okay,
But it wasn't
but
a requirement of the ship's design.
oh, okay.
But yes, the hull design of it, which I know I've seen, but but it's hard for me to think of words to describe. If I remember correctly, it looks kind of like let's like pretend that somebody had like a solid hull on the bottom, but then they like cut little grooves into it,
Mm-hmm.
took like a knife and just cut like lines going from the front all the way across the bottom. These and they weren't really lines. This was something about how they folded or how they put the planks together to make the exterior of the hull,
Okay.
and these created like the effect of lots and lots of mini keels all the way on the bottom part of the boat
Oh,
that did allow Viking longships to travel a little bit better in the water, more efficiently than a lot of other boats at the time.
I didn't know that was a
That was
thing.
part of the element of it, yeah.
Oh, okay, but no, I'm just talking about okay, so when you have the figure, hold up, when you have the figure like at the front of the boat, like if
Hmm.
I'm thinking like a English boat or whatever,
Hmm.
it's a person in front of the prow.
Okay.
But when I think of a Viking ship, the dragon head is like a continuation of the front of the boat.
Yes.
Like that was real?
Yes.
That's cool. I kind of assumed it was kind of like the horns on the Vikings' heads, like it was made up.
Oh, no.
That's really neat. Okay, cool. What were you going to say?
Oh, so yeah, you're making me go down a rabbit hole. It's like one after another. I'm thinking of, oh, I didn't think about this ship. Or, oh, that would be cool too. But is it cooler than one of the ones I already mentioned? So the one you noticed of my reaction was
Yeah.
at the time was I all of a sudden thought about, oh, a Queen Cream. I would love
What's
to get on
that?
board a Queen Cream. So the Queen Cream was the type of ship that the Carthaginians used they used with great effectiveness throughout their empire. This was the type of ship that the Romans were able to find a wrecked one,
Uh-huh.
and thanks to the Carthaginians labeling all the parts, because the Carthaginians had an insanely effective procedure for building these.
We talked
All the
about
parts were
this.
labeled and whatnot. The Romans were able to
Uh-huh.
pull the wreck together, or pull the wreck apart, see very easily how to put it back together, copied it, and built their own fleet.
Yep.
But it was the Queen Cream because a lot of ships at the time had the trireme was the most common warship of the time.
Okay.
Tri indicating three. It had 3 levels of oars pulling it. The Queen
Oh.
Cream had 5 rows of oars, so it was a bigger ship, but it could move faster. And if it hit you, because they rammed a lot in those days, it would hit you with a heck of a lot more power because it had all those extra oars in that size.
Wait, okay, so 5 levels. Are we talking like a 5-story building, like top to bottom, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5?
So not similar, yes, in that 5 elevated different levels of oars, but not the size of a 5-story building.
Okay.
The layers for the oarmen were often enough cramped down.
Well, yeah, it would have to, because once you get up to the top one, like their oars would have to be huge to reach the water.
Yep.
Dang.
And the top layer they did have larger oars, but it wasn't what we would call 5 stories. It was
Okay.
just enough
Yeah.
for them to be able to row effectively.
Ooh. Sounds miserable.
Oh yeah, galleys were. Sorry, these type of boats are called galleys.
Yeah.
Yeah, galleys were absolutely miserable. That's the reason why most of the people that operated them were slaves.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Wow.
Spanish continued to use galleys for a long time, even up until the Napoleonic era.
Dang.
Not
You would,
exclusively, but they still had galleys.
you would need a freaking lot of slaves on your boat to do that many oars.
Yep.
Holy cow.
And because they would need so many slaves on these boats, this was one of the limitations of the time. This also meant that galleys, be they triremes or quinqueremes or whatever, also didn't have that much of a range because there's only so many provisions that you could have on board, and you can't just go around starving your slave rowmen, because then who's going to row your butt back to home?
Oh my gosh. Did these boats also have sails? Or was it
Yes,
all reliance?
So
Okay.
a lot of galleys did also have a sail, but their primary purpose or their primary means of travel was the oars, or at least in battle. So that would be fair. You can, I cannot say that I know for sure the primary function of the oars was that the oars was their primary method of travel.
Mm-hmm.
Some ships, yes, the oars were the primary method of travel,
Mm-hmm.
but in others, it is possible that the sail was strong enough or did a good enough job that they could just rely on the sail, and they might have just saved the oars for battle. Whenever there was a battle, though, yes, they would definitely use the oars because they wanted that speed.
Dang, that's nuts.
Yep. So
Okay.
Lots of cool stuff on the water. The history of the Navy.
But so no aliens.
We were talking about how awesome water is. I said that water was, in my opinion, the number one most important thing. And yeah, we've done some pretty cool things, invented some really cool ways of doing stuff in the water.
That's awesome. But no aliens.
No.
No aliens.
No aliens.
Well, you just ruined this episode for me. This was no fun.
How did I ruin this episode for you?
No aliens.
So, to be clear, I do not dismiss the idea that there is not alien life out there. I am among the many believers that think that, there's definitely alien life out there. Have I any proof? No. But it seems absurd to believe that of the, last I heard, over 70 sextillion stars that are out there in the universe, you're not going to be able to convince me that at least one other of those managed to have the right conditions to create life. And being the religious man that I am, I believe in that scripture where it says, and God created man in his own image. So I'm also of the opinion that if there are aliens out there, they're going to look like us.
Yeah. So how do you know they didn't come here and help us build the pyramids? You don't know.
I should think that we would have more evidence than a bunch of rocks. Maybe we would have found a crashed ship somewhere along the system. I would hope that they would have come back by now to investigate, see, hey, how are those old cousins of ours doing?
Some people believe they have.
Oh, here we go. I like the Battlestar Galactica theory.
Okay.
So at the end of I hear that they're relaunching it again. I don't know if that's accurate and what they're going to do with it. But at the end of the sci-fi bit of Battlestar Galactica, they posed it that, these humans are not from Earth. They were from some other place in the galaxy, and they found Earth as they were running away from the Cylons and settled on our Earth of the past and became our ancestors. So, all right, well then technically, yes, aliens built the pyramids because then we, the humans, we are the aliens. Or rather, we are the descendants of the original aliens.
That's awesome. Thank you for giving that to me.
You're welcome. I'm happy that I could make you and your preposterousness happy.
Yes. All right, well, I thought this was going to be a shorter episode, and it went by really fast, but that was fun. All right. Well, stay tuned for next week because we have a really long episode coming out. I mean, not really long, but it's one of our longer ones because Christopher didn't know something and he had to do some research.
I mean, you could edit it down to be 5 minutes if you wanted to.
That would be so boring. How do I choose which of the information you shared to take out?
Keep the bit about, I can't say which parts to keep now because, I don't want to ruin it for our listeners.
No spoilers.
Okay, well, keep the part about the, I'm going to make hand motions so that Shirley knows what I'm talking about, but our lovely audience, I'm not going to sort of, so mention the part about the and
yes,
mention the part about the
Yes.
And then maybe also mention the part of the...
Okay, yeah.
Oh, and then mention the other part of the...
Naturally, yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
Keep that.
All right. So enjoy that, our lovely listeners. It'll be a good episode.
All right, thank you for listening. If you liked what you heard, then please subscribe, tell your friends, and leave us a 5-star review.
If you'd like to hear a future episode with more information about any of the many things that we talked about today, please contact us on Gmail, Facebook, Instagram, or TikTok at Married to History Pod.
Also, please contact us if you have a silly question idea or if there's something from history that you would love to learn about.
Just be sure to specify in your message if it is silly or serious because we don't want to treat a genuine quest for knowledge like a joke.
Talk to you next time. Bye.
Bye-bye. People that wait so long to get their driver's licenses, they should be ashamed of themselves.
How old were you?
It's not important. It was a different time. It was a different decade. It was literally a different. Oh no, it wasn't a different century.
Different quarter century.
It was a different decade. Yes, it was. No, wasn't even a different
decades.
quarter century. It hasn't. This isn't 25. We haven't reached a quarter quell year yet. That's what it was, right? It was every 25 years. Yeah, because that's why
That
they call it
sounds
the quarter
right.
quell.
Mhm.
I got my driver's license 1 week before they sent me off to Hawaii, and I didn't drive for the 6 months after that.
That's terrifying.
And then they made me teach Japanese guys how to drive.
I don't understand.
Oh, but it was great. I loved it. I miss Nakajima. I wish I had stayed in contact with him.